What's up guys and welcome back to On The Brick. Today I have for you another custom mock which is a little interesting. This build comes from Neon 5 or Neons and it is their UCS Speederbike. Now I personally have a problem with calling it that, but we're going to get to that in just 1 second after we look at the details. But first, if you watched my bikini bottom video, I believe I talked about how I bought a bigger non-Lego set, and then with that went ahead and purchased some smaller ones like the bikini bottom mock. And this was one of them because it was only $10. Now, this build only has 302 pieces and none of it is really too rare, so if you wanted to build this in Lego, it would still be really cheap to do so. I just took advantage of having that set shipping price and went ahead and got it. And also, there aren't really any issues with it being non-Lego. The clutch on the pieces was good, the colors were good, all of it holds together very well. In that regards, this is perfectly fine. Now, if I throw this next to a minifigure, you can see that it is obviously a pretty big size. At first I was wondering if this was supposed to be able to hold a buildable figure or one of those like construction figures, however they're called, but it doesn't actually do so. But it is still very recognizable as to what it should be. When you look at this, you can easily tell it is the Speederbike from Return of the Jedi. And truthfully, this side view is easily the best way to look at this, because when you look at it from the front, while you can still tell what it is, I don't know why, it just looks a little wonky to me. I mean, it doesn't really look bad, but this clearly isn't how it's meant to be on display either. Also, while we're up here, I just want to point out the one problem I did have in this build was this front section. It just doesn't really come together like the guy wants it to in his instructions. In the instructions, both of these builds on the sides are supposed to be exactly across from each other, but you just can't really do that with how they're designed. One of them has to be slightly offset. And if I remember correctly, they're supposed to be more inclined towards the center, but that also just didn't work. Ultimately, it doesn't look bad though, so I didn't really mind too much. And the only other place with any sort of detail is going to be on the back here, where you do have like the backpack or whatever this tan thing is. It's really the only not brown or black pieces on here, and I think it looks nice. It's also pretty accurate to the actual Speederbikes as well, of course. But now that really does beg the question, is this build a UCS build? And to me, the answer is simply no. While it is nice, it's really just an upscaled Speederbike and not something that I would consider to be a collector's piece, and definitely not something in the Ultimate Collectors series. I actually talked about this in my very first video with Jorstad's Hammerhead, but a UCS to me has to meet 3 criteria. 2 of them are really important and the third is kind of just a byproduct of the first 2 anyway. Number 1, a UCS set needs to be big. And that's because, to me, it needs to be something that you can display. It's a collector's piece. It is a collectible. And those are items that you're putting on display for people to see, something that you're proud to have. And this build just doesn't have that display ability. If I put this next to all my other UCS sets, this is gonna get overlooked very easily, especially when it can just literally hide in the shadows of something like the gunship. The second criteria that a UCS has for me is of course detail. A UCS set needs to have details. If it's gonna be big, it might as well have the details to go with it. It is a display piece like I just said. So you might as well be able to show off what the set really is and make it look nice. But this build doesn't really have any details. There's no like command console or really anything like that. I mean, it's technically there, but to me, this is still just pretty lackluster. And finally, the third criteria for me is that a UCS set must have at least 1,000 pieces. And this is really just to avoid things like the special edition Naboo Starfighter, which I do personally consider UCS, but it's definitely the exception. Also, I know some of the early sets weren't over 1,000 pieces, but the point being that this at only 300 is rather small in that category as well. And another thing to consider is that this does not come with any sort of stand or display plaque or anything. It's just the build itself, and one problem with that is that the front really sags. This is because it uses these two pieces that are just brought down by gravity. There's nothing rigid in there keeping them up or level at all. So ultimately, while I do think this is still a really nice build and I am very happy to have it, I wouldn't call it UCS at all. If I wanted a UCS speeder bike, I would go and get this one from Anio, which is big, it has details, it has a displayed plaque and a stand, and it's over 1,000 pieces. But something like this is still really worthwhile to have. Like I said, it's an upscaled version, so you still get something that's really nice, but isn't gonna break the bank either. And so for that reason, if you want this, the instructions will be in the link down below. And of course, I would love to know your thoughts on what a UCS set is. Am I missing anything? Do my criteria make sense? Let me know while you're down there, and go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button to really help out the channel. Or if you want to support the channel even more, you can always check me out on Discord, Instagram, and of course on Patreon, where you can join all of these wonderful people on screen and get shoutouts like Jonathan. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.